Okay, we're back. We're recording again. Back for another session. We're going to give this one more go tonight for another 90 minutes, then we're going to call it a night. Pick up tomorrow after our grand tour. Little technical glitch there, but we're still good. We're still good. This is all recording good. Yeah, looks like. Perfect.
And this scene doesn't really delve into the case that much. It's probably a good opportunity to catch up on some commentary from previous scenes, maybe.
If you want, yeah, sure.
If you have anything.
No, I'm just commenting as I go,
sorry,
so I stop and comment at the time. We're 3 hours into our commentary, and the movie is at an hour and 35 minutes. So we're getting there.
I just don't have rabbits on my mind.
You know what I think?
Daddy?
I think you care more about John Kennedy than your own family.
I think so
All
too.
day the kids are asking, "Where's Daddy?" What am I supposed to tell your kids, Jim?
I don't know what to tell them.
Haven't seen Sissy Spacek in a little while.
I'm doing my
I guess
job
I did
to
maybe
make
see
sure
her a
they
couple
grow up
months
in a
ago in
country where
something.
justice won't be enough
Oh yeah,
clean
that's who
hands
that
out there.
actress
They read
is.
about
It's
it on
Sissy
TV.
That
Spacek.
sounds
Yeah.
real
The
handy.
dinosaurs.
It smells like it's gonna rain, and it was drizzling the first time I went out, but it's not raining. It just smells like it. You know that like green vegetation smell you get in the air right before it rains or during the rain? It smells like that outside.
Who are you going to brag to about, baby?
Oh yeah.
You know who killed President Kennedy? Was there a conspiracy here in New Orleans? Excuse me,
Congratulations, boss. You're page 1.
Well, it ain't pretty. It says we've spent more than $8,000 on unexplained travel and investigative expenses in a period since November 1966.
God damn.
They went to the public records. They got the vouchers that we requested for withdrawal.
Shaw must have gotten him on our tape.
It could have been Ferry, Mark, Andrews, any of them.
Damn it. We didn't talk to Ruby because of them, and they're on our asses for a measly $8,000.
They hunt down the news. It's their business.
Well, you'd at least think they'd attempt to understand what we're trying to do.
Well, getting angry doesn't accomplish a damn thing. Now,
I love how they presented as Garrison did not want this media attention.
What do you mean?
That's like total bullshit.
Yeah, that's true.
well, either we pull out now or we go through some heavy flack together.
Look how young Kevin Costner is.
I
Bear
know.
in mind, each of you, this may affect the rest of your careers, your lives. Any one of you who want to pull out now, I assure you, I will bear no ill feelings towards that person. I'll reassign you to regular duties. That is then. Thank you. Means a great deal to me. I'm giving this offer $6,000 from my National Guard savings account, so we can continue.
$6,000
I'll make
in
speeches
the
where I
late
can,
1960s.
pick up
That's a
additional
significant amount of money.
Garrison, what shall I tell them? They're piling up outside the door. They want a statement. The phones are going crazier than bugs on a cake.
Neither confirm, deny, nor discuss, Sharon. Goodbye, ladies. Gentlemen. I'm going home to where I can get a decent day's work done.
Mr. Garrison's own silence on the subject has raised some interesting questions. With taxpayer money, has he uncovered some valuable new evidence? Or is he merely saving the information which will gain...
This is one of my favorite scenes. If
Oh,
not,
yeah.
If not my favorite. This might be my favorite scene.
It's hard to tell you what my favorite scene is. Honestly, I gotta go with the opening credits, those military drums and footage from the motorcade. I love that because that's all real footage. There's a couple of scenes in there that are faked, but for the most part, it's all real footage. I love that. Honestly, no joke, man. As a kid, I would watch it, stop it, rewind the tape, watch it again, stop it, rewind the tape, watch it again. I must have spent days of my life doing that.
I like how they let Joe Pesci just cut loose on this.
Oh yeah.
Let him do his thing.
Oh yeah.
Excellent.
Joe Pesci's a great actor. He's really good at playing these squirrely, unnerved guys, you know?
Guess, I just don't know who to trust anymore, I suppose I could use a pot of hot coffee and a few packs of Luckies, huh? So you got anything new on the investigation?
Who you scared of, Dave?
Me? Everybody. A to Z, mob, Cubans. That's it, follow the Cubans. Check them out. Here, Miami, Dallas. check out a guy named Eladio Del Valle. He used to be my paymaster when I flew missions into Cuba.
This guy's shaking his head like he doesn't believe him.
Hey, don't be writing this down. I ain't cooperating here with no one. What's going on here? There's a death warrant for me. Don't you get it? Damn. Wait a minute. You ain't bugged, are you? You ain't some bitch, Lou. Are you?
Dave, I always play square, no bugs. I love to have you go on the record, but I'm in no hurry. Whenever you're ready.
Hey, Slept since that shit article come out. Why'd you guys have to go and get me involved with this?
Did we get you involved, or did Clay Shaw, Dave?
Or did you get yourself involved by associating with these people and conspiring with them?
He used them too. The agency plays for keeps. I knew Oswald. He was in my Civil Air Patrol unit. I taught him everything. He was a wannabe, you know? Nobody really liked him because they thought he was a snitch. But I treated him good. He talked about his kid, you know, really wanted her to grow up with a chance, but...
Talk about his kid. He had a kid then.
Yeah, I was just about to say
It's the first time I noticed that.
You're mixing the times. You're saying that he talked about his kid. I mean, maybe it implies he talked about his kid later when they were training for the Bay of Pigs or whatever. I guess that's the implication. But he's saying, you know, he talked about his kid. When Oswald was in the Civil Air Patrol with David Ferry, he was a teenager. He didn't have kids. He hadn't even gone to Russia yet.
What's this? What's going on here?
Ain't no way coming in. Just roll up.
I got it.
Black, just give it. Black. Shit, my neck is killing me. I got cancer. I've had it for years. I've been working with mice, you know, trying to find a cure.
Did you ever work for the
And
CIA?
Judy Baker. You didn't mention Judy.
You make it sound like some remote fucking experience in ancient history. Man, you don't leave the agency. Once you're in, they got you for life.
Yeah, that is one thing that I have heard. Like, you can leave the agency, but the agency doesn't ever leave you. You know, that's like a brotherhood up in there, you know? And it's understandable. The kind of shit you do when you're involved in intelligence, like, you cannot just pack up your suitcase and walk away from that, you know what I mean?
Not easily.
Not easily.
Shaw's an untouchable. Highest clearance. Shaw.
Majestic 12? Highest clearance?
About Ruby.
Jack
Shaw was interviewed. That's all he did, right? He just provided information on things that happened when he was overseas.
Yeah, he volunteered this information. He worked for the domestic contacts divisions, and it was in the late 1940s to the mid 1950s, I believe. And all of the information he provided was about business in Europe. It wasn't about like any kind of sinister intelligence stuff, you know, as far as we know. But I mean, this was a very common thing, you know. The CIA, it's a foreign intelligence agency. They want to talk to Americans who frequently travel abroad and do business abroad. There's nothing suspicious about doing that. It's logical.
And in that time, in that climate, you want to do that.
Yeah.
You never know what information they might have that may be helpful for national security.
Yeah, totally. You want to just get the information, you know? And he was never an agent of the CIA. He never received any payment for doing any of that, and neither did anybody else. But
they twisted it to make it appear.
Yeah, it made it like, oh, he's an agent. He wasn't an agent. He was a civilian reporting to a civilian agency that was not a covert part of the CIA, you know? And thousands of other people who traveled abroad in that period also did that. This wasn't something that Clay Shaw just did and nobody else ever did, you know?
Man, funny game.
What about the mob, Dave? How do they fit in this?
The agency too, man. CIA and the mafia working together. Trying to whack out the beer, mutual interest. They've been doing it for years. It's the weirdest thing you could dream. Well, check out something called Mongoose, Operation Mongoose. Government, Pentagon stuff. They're in charge. But who the fuck pulls whose chain? Who the fuck knows? Oh, what a deadly web we weave when we practice to deceive.
And who killed the president?
Oh, man, why don't you fucking stop it? Shit! This is too fucking big for you. You know that? Who did the president? Who killed him? Fuck, man! It's a mystery! It's a mystery wrapped in a riddle inside an enigma! The fucking shooters don't even know! Don't you get it? Fuck, man! I can't keep talking like this. You're gonna fucking kill me! I'm gonna fucking die!
If the shit you're saying is actually true, they probably should have killed you already, man. You're a loose cannon. You're a huge liability.
Yeah.
Again, if I was running this conspiracy, this meeting with Garrison never would have happened. You would have disappeared a long time ago.
He's so on edge.
I know, like how did this guy get involved in intelligence to begin with? He hardly has like a calm demeanor, you know what I mean? Like, who recruited you for the CIA, bro? Let me talk to that guy. Bro, what are you doing? Why are you bringing people like this in? Give me somebody who's more stable.
In the world was to be a Catholic priest, live in a monastery, pray, serve God. I had one terrible fucking weakness. They defrocked me.
This is all speculation.
Yeah.
Dialogue.
I was in Fred Litwin's book, and when I was talking with him when he was in Toronto, he mentioned that it was this scene where, I don't know if it was in the screenplay or if it was in the annotated book that went along with the movie. Oliver Stone said we had to get a little creative with putting words in Ferry's mouth. Yeah, a little creative. Like, Ferry denied ever knowing Oswald. He denied ever having anything to do with this. He went to his grave with those denials firmly intact. I mean, it's not worth anything, right? Because if he was involved with this, it's not like he would openly admit it. But I mean, for what it's worth, he did deny it. And this stuff here, this is just pure fiction.
Everything
Makes for a better story, though.
He was going to be a suspect at first till he died.
Just talk
Yeah.
to us on the
Garrison was
record.
going to use him as a suspect.
I guarantee it.
they get to you too. They'll destroy you. They're untouchable, man. I'm so
So this didn't take place because he was a suspect. He was one of Garrison's suspects. Until he died. And then Shaw became the new suspect.
Oh, really? Was that how it went?
Yeah.
So Ferry was the primary suspect until his death, and then the emphasis suddenly switched to Shaw.
Yep. That's how it really happened.
My name is Bulgarian. I'm with Literaturna Gazeta from Moscow.
You know he's not the president, Mr. Garrison is too busy.
Boss, I'm telling you, something or somebody's put tremendous heat on David Fair. If we sit on our behinds any longer, I don't think the guy's going to hold on.
Look at this bullshit.
Ferry calls the A probe a
What he
big
says,
joke.
We can't possibly call him to a grand jury.
Watch your language.
Of course.
My instinct is that Barry's going to keep on deteriorating. We'll end up getting more out of him when he finally cracks.
Oh, bullshit!
Yeah.
Just so we call him in now,
That's
he might freeze
not
up. We'll lose
necessarily
the best shot we ever
incorrect.
had. Don't get it, do you? He can't go down any
Kind
further.
of
We've got to
ethical
protect you both.
implications of pushing somebody to the brink like that, but I mean, I think he is correct. If you wait for him to totally lose his shit, you'll probably get more out of him then.
Going to Washington.
What?
Yeah, interestingly, it says he's closely connected to these events, but
Fletcher
he
Prouty.
won't come down here.
This is one of my favorite scenes in this movie.
I'll
Donald
tell you, I
Sutherland,
need more
another
men. I
great
got to get
Canadian
him in,
actor.
boss. I can't even
Honestly,
afford to watch Barry.
the
Keep this man by word.
I hesitate to say like hero worship for the fictional character X, but I can't even begin to tell you how cool I thought X was as a kid. As a kid, it was X and the cigarette smoking man. That's who I wanted to be when I grew up, you know? I wanted to be a cool, sinister, shadowy guy like that.
When they go interview him in Washington, the X guy, I think that is the peak of the film that has more information coming out at one given time.
Yep.
He's just spewing out so much.
Yeah, rapid fire,
We
spin
obviously
it
got
up.
the bastard's word now. I'm coming to Washington.
He was a consultant.
Yeah, he
Fletcher
was.
Prouty.
He was, yeah.
And so Garrison is listening to Fletcher Prouty, Sarah Weck, Jim Myers, Robert Broden, and he's trying to squeeze all this in the film. He did
Yeah.
a pretty good job of getting a lot of that in there.
Yeah, he did. And I mean, it's something that people have commented on. It's that Judy Baker does not appear anywhere in this movie, not even like a tiny little reference anywhere. And it's because, you know, think about all the shit they had to shoehorn into this movie, stuff that is like totally disconnected and doesn't lend itself to a good narrative flow.
Were they even aware of Judith?
Who knows? I mean, at that point, I don't know when Judy had published her books, but I think they were published by this point, weren't they? I don't know.
I think she got prominence somewhere in the 90s, which would be kind of late for this.
Yeah. I guess maybe after this movie, interest in the JFK assassination kind of underwent a little revival there, and maybe that's when she slipped into the discourse. Honestly, I don't know. It was
Have you seen the pictures of David Ferrier's real apartment?
No, I don't believe I have.
There's pictures of him in death in his bed.
Oh yeah.
His real apartment.
Oh yeah.
It looks nothing like this. Nothing.
Oh okay.
It's a plain apartment, bed, a few pieces of furniture. There's not a bunch of mice cages or anything like that.
Oh yeah.
It's small, way smaller. But it's online. You look up David Ferrier.
Oh yeah. I'll
in death
definitely
or something
look
like
into
that. And you look at his autopsy report too. That's available.
I think it was in Fred Litwin's book too. He mentioned that when Oliver Stone was making this movie, he got the motion picture rights for On the Trail of the Assassins. He got the motion picture rights for 6 Seconds in Dallas. So between Garrison and Mars, he pretty much covered all the bases. By getting the movie rights for both of those films, he pretty much got the movie rights for every possible JFK conspiracy theory or claim. Which, good going, Oliver. Good way to cover your bases, buddy.
Was Mark Lane involved at all?
I don't believe so. I'm not sure.
He's in bed. He's not like on a couch like that. He's in bed.
Looks like natural causes.
This is addressed to no one.
Pay close attention to what the medical examiner said. It looks like a berry aneurysm. It looks like natural causes. Okay?
No signature.
That's what his autopsy report
To
says.
me, this life is for me a sweet prospect. I find nothing in it that is desirable, and on the other hand, everything that is loathsome goes on and on. Daily, we are propagandized more and more about a rising crime.
Pretty flowery for Dave Ferry.
Pretty flowery for David Ferry, yeah. Kind of. Wow, it's almost 11 right now. Do you have the local time? I've got 10:58 on my clock.
Yeah. 11.
Yeah. Do you want to go to what? 11:30ish?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. Thyroid
Here's the real Eladio Del Valle.
raises the metabolism.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, he's really
Very
murdered
strike you as
in
a kind
Miami.
of person with a low metabolism.
Hardly, I'd say
He's
the
Oswald at the Cap.
Oh yeah.
Have you seen that?
Yeah, I've seen that
Oh,
photo
yeah.
at the cat cookout.
Okay, here's Ferry.
Oh yeah.
I think it got him killed.
You can barely see it.
Liz, boss.
You can see.
More bad news from Miami.
yeah.
They found Ferry's Cuban friend Eladio Del Valle today.
It's nothing like that.
Machete in his
Yeah.
jaw. He was tortured, shot in the heart at point blank range, and his skull split open with an axe.
Was that any? Is any of that actually verified? That he was hacked to death with a machete, tortured, shot in the heart, and his skull split open with an axe? Like, is this guy fucking Rasputin or something? Like, how many different ways?
I think
they
they
killed this guy.
They did a number on him, but that's exaggerated. There was no axe.
Yeah.
It was a knife or something else.
Yeah.
But they did a number on him, so it was really violent.
Oh, okay.
But his autopsy report is online.
Same thing, no name, no signature. When you receive
Here's another
this, I
picture of
will be
Ferry.
quite
Oh, yeah.
dead, so no answer will
Yeah,
be
that's him.
possible.
So he's in
I
bed,
offer you love,
on
and all I
pillow
got
blanket, all
was
that.
my
He's
heart
not like
and
on
my
a couch or whatever.
Yeah.
Have a word with you.
He still got his fucking wig on.
Yeah, I noticed that. He still has his wig on.
If he went through the struggle, his wig would have come off.
And you can't just put it back on and have it look
Ruptured blood vessels in the
like
brain.
it normally looks.
Can you ascertain if there's poroid in his system?
Not in a routine autopsy. But if we looked at the spinal fluid, there might be a high level of iodine, but it's difficult to know. What you thinking, Jim?
No, it doesn't make sense, Nick. I mean, the man's afraid of dying, but he kills himself in a way that leaves no trace. But he leaves 2 unsigned suicide notes.
If it's a suicide, I've seen weirder, Jim.
Yeah.
Fact is,
If this is a suicide, I've
and
seen
so is our
weirder.
case.
Unless we go for Shaw now.
With whose testimony? Willie O'Keefe, a male prostitute. Jack Martin, a drunk. Vernon Bundy, a dope fiend. Shaw's got respect.
And they weren't at the house
Newspaper editors,
when he
member of
died.
the Bar Association.
I agree
They're
with
not
Bill.
gonna
We
sign
haven't got
it.
it good
Shaw's
yet.
gonna get whacked. Now, how many corpses is it gonna take before you lawyers figure out what's
You
going
watch your
on?
mouth, Sonny. Barrett did this to himself.
He didn't do this to himself. He died of natural causes. So this is the part in the original theatric release. I remember when I had it on VHS where there was an intermission. This was the part between the first and second VHS tape.
Hey, where you at, Frank?
You know what? That's right. I remember that.
Yep, it was right when he threw the thing down.
No, boss will fry me and hog fatty you. I talk to you.
Boss got a serious problem, Bill. Real serious. We know what's been going on over at your office.
Yeah, I guess you do.
You got nothing there. I'm talking to your friend now. You're riding on the Titanic. Time to jump off before you get destroyed along with Garrison.
Frank, I don't want to hear this.
We're talking about your career here, Bill. Your life. You're a young guy. We know you're working that Castro thing.
No, I'm not.
Yes, you are. Look, we know Oswald.
No, I'm not. Yes, you are.
Castro did. But if that comes out, there's going to be a war, boy. Millions of people are going to die. And that's a hell of a lot more important than Jim Garrison. God damn it, look at me when I talk to you. You're goddamn too selfish.
I can't.
Shut up! Shut up! If you've got a brain in that thick skull of yours, listen to me. You listen real hard. Now get in the car.
Like, I don't understand, you know, isn't that what you guys wanted? Weren't they trying to cajole Kennedy into ordering like a full-on invasion of Cuba? Didn't you guys kill Kennedy and set it up to make it look like Oswald, a pro-Castro Cuban, had done that? So you would have the pretext to launch that full-on invasion? So why you guys go this far down the rabbit hole and then change your mind, and then get weak knees? You know what I mean? Like, buddy, the hard part of it's already done. You already assassinated JFK. You already killed a bunch of other people, too, to cover up your tracks. So, I mean, we're all in now. You know, the time to have second thoughts about this is before you assassinate the president, not like years later after you've assassinated JFK and killed a bunch of other people, too. You guys are the worst conspiracy ever. Those 3 guys and Mary Surratt had a better conspiracy than you guys have got going here. The Lincoln Memorial. I would always want to go to DC. A couple people I know have gone to DC. I could spend a whole day in Arlington Cemetery. Yeah. I could go at like 8 a.m. and be there till sundown. I have a lot of people I need to see there.
Well, I just hope it was worth my while.
He's in, Donald Sutherland is in something recent. He's got to be about 90.
He's one of the best actors ever, Donald Sutherland. He is such a cold, sinister, evil-looking dude.
Mr. Garrison. And I assume if you've come this far, what I have to say interests you. But I'm not going to name names and tell you who or what I represent, except to say you're close. You're closer than you think.
Let me see when he was born.
Okay?
I remember watching him when I was a kid.
Everything I'm going to tell you is classified top secret.
Sometimes you see him in movies from like the 60s and 70s and he's so young.
I was one of those secret guys in the Pentagon that supplies the military hardware, planes, bullets, rifles, for what we call black operations. Black ops. Assassinations, coup d'etat, rigging elections, propaganda, psych warfare, and so forth. World War II, I was in Romania, Greece, Yugoslavia. I helped evacuate part of the Nazi intelligence apparatus just before the end of the war.
Project Paperclip?
Fight against the communists.
Yeah, Werner von
Born in 35.
48.
Wow.
Stole the elections. France 49.
My dad's still alive. He's born in 30.
Overthrew Korea and the Philippines. Arbenz in Guatemala. Mossadegh in Iran. We were in Vietnam in 54.
Like almost 80 years
Indonesia
old.
58. Tibet 59. Got the Dalai Lama out. We were good. Very good.
And then you get this whole Cuba thing.
Cuban thing.
Not so good.
Set up all the bases for the invasion. Supposed to take place in October '62. Khrushchev sent the missiles to resist the invasion. Kennedy didn't invade. And we were standing out there with our dicks in the wind. A lot of pissed off people, Mr. Garrison. Understand? I'll come to that later. So, 1963. I spent much of September '63 working on the Kennedy plan for getting all U.S. personnel out of Vietnam by the end of 1965. This plan was one of the strongest, most important papers issued from
You think he exaggerated his role? Oh, big time. Big time. Big time.
I mean, this is the thing about people like this. Like, they can pretty much just make shit up. And there's no way to prove that they're making it up. You know what I mean? So he can just assert whatever claim, and there's no way to prove that this is true or this is not true. But I definitely think he exaggerated his role big time, big time. He was a colonel, which is like a medium level rank. So it's like, if you're a colonel, I think colonel is like only a step or two away from a general.
You are going to the South Pole.
I am?
You are. Dr. Mooney's got all the details. I want you to check with him and have yourself a nice vacation.
The next step up from colonel is general.
Yeah, is it brigadier general?
Sent by General Y
1
to the
star.
South Pole as the military escort for
So yeah, it's a
international
higher
VIP.
level medium rank.
I was on my way back in New Zealand when the president was killed. Now, Oswald was charged at 7 p.m. Dallas time with Tippett's murder. That's 2 o'clock in the afternoon of the next day, New Zealand time. But already, their papers had the entire history of this unknown 24-year-old man, Oswald. Studio picture, detailed biographical data,
Because they
Russian
already
information, and
made
we're
the
pretty
report
sure
on
of the
him.
fact that he...
Yeah, when he defected to the Soviet Union, they got a bunch of information that the news services had. Also, he's saying that Oswald was charged at 7 p.m., but he had been arrested earlier in the day.
Like 3.
And people...
Or no, he was arrested at 1:45?
Yeah, something like that, around 2 in the afternoon. But I mean, he had been paraded in front of the media. His name had been released to the media. So this sent the media services scrambling to their sources to be like, what do we know about this guy? Do we have anything on him?
Yeah, and they already had stuff on him.
Yeah, they had his picture. They had his biographic information. They had a bunch of stuff, you know? So...
Media, it's their nature to be first with the report.
Yeah.
So they put it out as quick as they can.
Yeah, and also, you know, they had wire services back in the 60s, so it's like you could send something to Australia and it would get there relatively quickly. I mean, obviously not as fast as today, half a century later, but quick enough to have a special afternoon edition of the
You can wire photographs. It's not the highest quality, but you can do it.
Yeah, it can be done, and it could have been done back in the 60s.
Killed the president alone, although it took them 4
James
more
Hawkins
hours before they even charged
wired
him with that crime.
within 30 minutes of the shooting, or I think maybe a half an hour or an hour. He wired Altkins 6
cover story was being
to the Associated Press main office, which is not in Dallas.
Yeah,
After I came back.
So I mean, it was definitely possible.
Why was I, the chief of special ops, selected to travel to the South Pole?
Fletcher Prouty was not the chief of special ops. I need to see some source for that claim.
That time to do a job that any number of others could have done. And I wondered if it could have been because one of my routine duties, if I had been in Washington, would have been to arrange for additional security in Texas. So I just...
Fletcher Prouty's one of his routine jobs, if he was in stateside, would not have been to arrange for special security for the president. Again, I want to see a source for that claim. I think that's just something you made up. Like, I can't, even if you wanted the military to provide extra security for the president, you wouldn't go to the chief of special ops for that. You'd go to somebody else, you know? Like, special ops, they do special ops. They don't do presidential security, you know?
Decided to check it out. And sure enough, I found out that someone had
I've never seen the military do
intelligence group.
They don't trust the military to do it.
Houston to stand down that day.
They want their own special people.
Yeah,
doing
that are selectively recruited, trained, and equipped to do
that they
this
can
job.
trust.
Yeah, that
they don't know if some
are on
goofy
the
guys
inside, you know.
Some goofy guy in the ranks of the military can try to kill the president.
Yeah, totally. He's outside of the inner circle. He's not somebody we know or that we work with frequently. Even though he's a military man, he doesn't necessarily mean he's to be trusted. And what he just said, that somebody had ordered the military unit at Fort Sam Houston to stand down. That's not true.
Stand down from what?
You know, like those guys were in Dallas, and there were military intelligence people in the crowds, so they were there. They weren't ordered to stand down, but it's like it wasn't like high-ranking military intelligence people. It was just extra bodies on the street just in case, and in the end, they didn't make any difference anyway.
Over the protests of the unit commander, Colonel Reich.
I believe it's a mistake.
This is significant because it is standard operating procedure, especially in a known hostile city like Dallas, to supplement the Secret Service. I mean, even if we had not allowed the bubble top to be removed from the...
Okay, you do not allow the President of the United States to do anything. He tells you what you are going to do, and you do it. So if he wants
not today,
not today. If he wants the bubble top off, it's off.
Yeah, that was the case then.
Yeah, if he wants the guys off the back of the car, they're off the back of the car. You know, like today, I understand that the Secret Service can actually overrule the president, probably because of this.
When it's a security issue, he becomes the Secret Service is the boss. Period.
Mm-hmm.
Nowadays.
Yeah, nowadays, but 50 years ago, it was not the case. You know. And there's been a lot of contention about that issue because some people imply directly or indirectly that Kennedy was indirectly responsible for his own death, which, in all honesty, there's some truth to that. There is some truth to that.
I wouldn't say it, put it in those words, because ultimately the perpetrator is responsible. But had he not ordered the bubble top to be taken off, he might have been alive.
Yeah.
Because it may have given Oswald pause. There's no reason to think that Oswald wouldn't believe that the bubble top was bulletproof.
Yeah.
We all know that it wasn't.
Yeah.
But how do we know he didn't know that?
Yeah, that's true. The bubble top was just clear, transparent plexiglass, I believe, so it was not bulletproof. But I mean, even having that material there in between the muzzle and the target, it could have done something. It could have deflected it, or when the first shot hit it, there would be no ambiguity. People would know right away.
It'd be a louder noise or something.
Yeah, or you might see
some breakage.
Yeah, see it take a little bit of damage and go, oh shit, they're shooting. You might have gotten a faster response or something.
We would have placed at least 100 to 200 agents on the sidewalk without question. I mean, only a month.
200 agents?
UN Ambassador Adlai Stevenson stood on him. There had already been several attempts on de Gaulle's life in France. We would have arrived days ahead of time, studied the
So
route,
did they do that everywhere else?
Never would have allowed all
Did he
those
travel?
wide open empty windows.
Had like 200 people on the ground?
Yeah,
like when
200 extra people. Yeah, have you seen those photos from the motorcade in Ireland? Oh my god.
With all the open windows and everything?
Yeah, and he's saying, we never would have let all these empty open windows overlooking Dealey Plaza. So if the window's open and there's people inside of it, that's fine. But if they're open and empty, you're not allowed to do that. Like, basically, they would go and they would tell property owners along the parade route, this is your building, you're responsible for it. If you got people in your windows, you're responsible for them. The security was just very sloppy back in this era because nothing had happened. The last president to get assassinated was McKinley, which the time between McKinley's assassination and Kennedy's assassination is equal to the time between Kennedy's assassination today. It was a lifetime ago. Nobody was thinking about this stuff. It's like, what if people have private homes along the parade route? Are federal agents going to go into people's private homes and tell them you have to close your windows?
Overlooking Dealey? Never. We'd have had our own snipers covering the area. The minute the window went up, they'd have been on the radio.
We'd have our own snipers covering the area. What area? Covering the entire parade route? You'd have your own sharpshooters. You're going to have a sharpshooter every 100 yards. You have a shooter and a spotter every 100 yards, 150 yards.
Yeah.
To cover the entire parade route. And it's like, is that one sharpshooter supposed to be panning the windows on all the buildings to make sure none of the windows open up?
In the crowd, packages, rolled up newspapers, coat over and up. Never.
Packages, rolled up newspapers, coat over the arm. So a bunch of shit that people in a crowd would normally be carrying. I have seen Secret Service agents at the fence line of a crowd telling people, take your hands out of your pocket, show me your hands, or things like that. But it's like, what are you going to do? There's always going to be risks. You can't protect against all the risks. The idea is not to have the motorcade and have this ridiculous security apparatus to protect the motorcade. Just don't have the motorcade to begin with, and there goes half the problem right there.
Never would have let a man open an umbrella along the way. Never would have allowed that limousine to slow down to 10 miles an hour, much less take that unusual curve at Houston and Elm.
Never would have.
We addressed that.
Never would have let a man open an umbrella. It was a rainy day in Dallas that
Actually,
day,
it was clear.
At the time of the motorcade, it was clear, but it had been a rainy morning. So people walking around with coats over their arms or big raincoats on or umbrellas, that wouldn't have been
If you look
odd.
at the films, though, it wasn't that many people with umbrellas or coats.
Okay.
There weren't.
Well, I mean, recall Marianne Moorman had her big red raincoat on, and I assume, a lot of the footage we've studied has to deal with the events in Dealey Plaza, but I'm sure if you went looking in the footage along Main Street, along Turtle Creek Boulevard, you might have seen people with umbrellas in their hands, people with raincoats on. It had rained that morning and it had suddenly cleared. At the very last minute, it suddenly cleared up, and that's when they decided to remove the bubble top.
I think it cleared a little earlier. That might be a myth.
Maybe, perhaps.
Presence in the streets that day.
I think it was as they were unloading the car off of the plane in Dallas. That's when they were like, "Okay, the weather's all right. You can take the bubble top off."
In Dallas. Now, who could have best done this? Black Ops, Mr. Garrison. People in my business, people like my superior officer, could have called Colonel Reich and said, "Look, we have another unit coming from so-and-so, providing security. You'll stand down." I mean, that day, in fact, there were some individual Army intelligence people in Dallas. I'm still trying to figure out who and why. But they weren't protecting the client. And, of course, Oswald.
They were from that unit you said previously stood down.
Army Intel had a Harvey Lee Oswald on file. But all those files have been destroyed.
evidence that you cannot produce is just as good as evidence that does not exist.
Rumble did that repeatedly today.
If evidence you can't produce, it's just as good as evidence that does not exist.
Yeah, hypothesizing evidence that you don't know to exist, and using the absence of that evidence to prove something.
Yeah, and when you ask them, well, where is this evidence? Well, it was all destroyed. Well, then how do you know it ever existed to begin with? You know what I mean?
Strange things were happening, and your Lee Harvey Oswald had nothing to do with them. We had the entire cabinet on a trip to the Far East. We had 1/3 of a combat division returning from Germany in the air above the United States at the time of the shooting. At 12:34 p.m., the entire telephone system went out in Washington for a solid hour. And
there was telephone disruptions all over the United States. People ran to their phones to call their family, call their friends, you know. And I mean, this was a traumatizing event, and some of those people were calling to gab, to gossip, to chit-chat. And some of those people were calling because they needed a human connection in that moment, you know. They were experiencing trauma, and they needed to talk to somebody.
Did the same thing happen for 9/11?
Yep, same thing happened on 9/11. I remember on the news, they were telling you if you were in the New York area or you're in New York State, please do not get on your phone right now. The phone lines are being totally overloaded as people call in and out, you know?
On the plane back to Washington, word was radioed from the White House Situations Room to Lyndon Johnson that one individual performed the assassination. Does that sound like a bunch of coincidences to you, Mr. Garrison? Not for one moment.
Depending on what time.
The cabinet was out of the country to get their perceptions out of the way. Troops are in the
That is true. Most of the cabinet was out of the country. They were on a flight over the Pacific, and they got word and they turned around and came back. But it's like they were back in Washington before Kennedy's body arrived at Andrews in Maryland, because it was Robert McNamara and Timothy Dalton and a couple of those other guys who actually carried his body off. That's a very emotional moment when the honor guard is there ready to receive the president's casket, and at the last minute Robert McNamara and a couple of the other cabinet secretaries push their way through and they want to carry him to the hearse, you know.
One of the most emotional moment for me was when Robert ran up those stairs to Jackie.
He went right by LBJ. Apparently LBJ was like, Bobby, and he didn't even flinch, didn't even notice him, went right by him. I think that a couple authors, I think Manchester was one of them, and maybe somebody else, they commented that there was always this animosity between Lyndon Johnson and Robert Kennedy, even going back to before his brother was the president, but that kind of really put that last nail in the coffin when Air Force One arrived at Andrews and Robert Kennedy just totally snubbed him. I mean, I don't blame him.
That is just a gut-wrenching scene for me to see that.
I don't blame him. You know. Jackie and Robert got very close after the assassination, you know. I mean, I don't blame them.
Didn't work to keep the wrong stories from spreading if anything went wrong with the plan. Nothing was left to chance. He could not be allowed to escape alive. Well, I never thought things were the same after that. Vietnam started for real. There was an era of, I don't know, make-believe in the Pentagon and CIA. Those of us who'd been in secret ops since the beginning knew the Warren Commission was fiction. But there was something deeper, uglier. I know Alan Dulles very well. I briefed him many a time in his house. But for the life of me, I still can't figure out why he was appointed to investigate Kennedy's death, the man who had fired him. Dulles, by the way.
All right. The Dulles families and the Kennedy families were very close. In Hyannisport, Dulles owned a house that was very close to the Kennedy compound. Kennedy, the story I've heard, and I don't know how accurate it is that Dulles wanted to resign after the Bay of Pigs because he had to fall on his sword to take the blame for this, to shield the president from criticism. If he resigns, you as the president, you can say, hey, the CIA fucked this up, and they're the ones that are going to take the heat for it. Kennedy did not want to accept his resignation, but Dulles had to explain to him, no, I have to resign to protect you, because this way you can put all the blame on me. And I believe it was after he resigned from the CIA, Kennedy gave him the Presidential Medal of Freedom.
Was it afterwards?
I believe it was. I'm not entirely certain about that, but I believe it was after his resignation that Kennedy awarded that medal to him. You know, why was Alan Dulles put on the Warren Warren Commission, because Allen Dulles was the founding director of the Central Intelligence Agency. Allen Dulles had been there through the OSS days during the Second World War and into the Cold War and into the 1950s and 60s. He had built the Central Intelligence Agency as like a peacetime foreign intelligence apparatus, and he knew everything. He knew where all the bodies were buried, he knew all the secrets, and he had to be on the Warren Commission for issues of national security. He could have steered them away from stuff that they didn't want them to find, and he could have also protected American interests. Plus, also, if the question came up of CIA involvement, Allen Dulles would probably be the best guy to handle those questions, because he knew that was his agency, you know? He knew it in and out.
It was General Wyeth's benefactor. I got out in '64. Resigned my commission.
I never realized Kennedy was so dangerous to the establishment. Is that why?
Well, that's the real question, isn't it? Why? The how and the who is just scenery for the public. Oswald, Ruby, Cuba, the mafia. Keeps them guessing like some kind of parlor game, prevents them from asking the most important question, why? Why was Kennedy killed? Who benefited? Who has the power to cover it up?
The how and the why matter greatly. They matter greatly. You have to be able to explain how this occurred in reality. If you cannot do that, then you don't really have an explanation. Jumping to why and saying why is the only question that matters is a fundamentally wrong way to go about figuring out anything, you know? I mean, people have been convicted and gone to prison and gone to death row without the prosecutor ever really knowing
That's not
why.
even... The why is good to know, but it's not the objective when you're investigating a case.
Yeah.
If you happen to find out, then good, because then it helps explain, of course, why it happened. But you have to prove how it happened and who's responsible.
Yeah, I mean, basically, you know, there's a means, motive, opportunity is the classic crime trifecta, right? You have to have means, motive, and opportunity. If all you have is motive, then
you don't have anything with motive alone.
Yeah, you can't just have motive.
You have an idea of how to pursue the investigation, but you don't have anything you can take to court.
Yeah.
You have to have means and opportunity.
Yeah, definitely.
Actually, above even those, you have to have, you know, evidence and leads.
Yeah, big time.
Because you can give anybody means and opportunity.
Yeah.
Milt Turcotte had means and opportunity.
Yeah. He also has motive, you know? I mean, or his motive isn't as strong as other people. Then you have somebody like Lee Harvey Oswald who has very obvious means, very obvious opportunity, but he does not have motive. Or like he does have motive, but people often say, you know, what is his motive? Or his motives are very murky and ambiguous.
I always say, because we don't know his motive doesn't mean he didn't have one.
That's true.
So you can't conclude that he didn't have motive just because we don't know what it was.
Well, I mean, in a sense, we kind of do know what his motive was. You know, he had sought notoriety. He had sought to be different. He had sought to be... You know, he wanted to be a big man and make big moves.
But you know the argument for that is, if he wanted to do those things, why didn't he take credit?
Because he was enjoying it too much. Finally, he was getting that attention and recognition that he always wanted his whole life. The whole world was chasing after him now. The whole world was out there scrambling, saying his name, trying to find out everything they could about him. He wanted to milk that for every second of... What's the word I'm looking for? Every second of legitimization that he could get. This was payback against society.
And he wouldn't be the only one to do that.
Yep.
Because a lot of those infamous criminals that get convicted, they take it to their graves.
Yeah. And a lot of the times they deny it. Like when you catch a serial killer, sometimes they fold right away and they say, okay, you caught me, I did this. And sometimes they deny it, and go to trial. What's your plea? Not guilty. Deny it, get convicted. And then maybe after they've been in prison for a couple of years, or, you know, as part of their sentence, they're like, look, we're going to kill you, or you can tell us all the details of this crime and we'll convert your death sentence to a life sentence. And then that's when they go, okay, here's all the details, you know?
I'm getting really tired, so...
All right, let's just finish this scene and we'll wrap it up for tonight, okay?
Right after the Bay of Pigs.
I gotta unload all those files off two of my cameras. I'm gonna be up
security action numbers 55, 56.
Oh man, I'm gonna walk back.
These are crucial documents, classified, top secret. But basically in them, Kennedy instructed General Lemnitz, chairman of the Joint
General,
Chiefs,
this
that
is
from
a
here
direct
on
from the
forward,
President.
the Joint Chiefs of Staff would be wholly responsible for all covert paramilitary action in peacetime. This basically ended the reign of the CIA, splintered it as JFK promised he would into 1,000 pieces, and
he didn't say that.
He didn't.
Oh, there's no evidence of him saying that.
Well, I mean, even if there were evidence of saying it, just because somebody says something in the heat of the moment when they're pissed off, it doesn't mean they're going to follow through. And he didn't splinter the CIA into 1,000 pieces because the CIA was still around years after the Bay of Pigs when Kennedy was president. You know, this is the bureaucracy. If you don't like the way the bureaucracy is being run, you just swap out the one director for somebody you like better. You know, somebody that's going to follow your instructions or your orders more closely than the last guy did.
now he was ordering the military.
Even him saying it's
to
still
help
just
him
an
do it.
asserted
This
claim.
was unprecedented.
There's
I
no
can't tell you
first
the
evidence of him
shockwave
saying it
that
except
sent along the
for
corridors of power
a
in
claim
Washington. This,
that
of
was
course,
made
was
years
firing
after he
down
supposedly
Dulles,
said it.
Richard Bissell and General Charles Campbell, all of them sacred cows in intel since World War II. You got some very upset people here. Kennedy's directives were never really implemented because of bureaucratic resistance.
That's not true either.
But one of the results was
Johnson implemented a lot of his
the
policies.
Cuban operation was turned over to my department as Operation
Johnson even
Mongoose.
took him further than what Kennedy would have.
Mongoose
Yeah.
was pure black ops. It was secretly based in the South Campus of Miami University,
And
which was the largest.
Johnson
domestic
didn't want to be
CIA
president.
station.
You know
Budgeted
what?
annually
Johnson
over hundreds of
said
millions.
that, but I don't know how truthful that is.
I think it's true. That's why he didn't run. And
Didn't he run in that Democratic primary in 1960? 1959, 1960? Was
he wanted it then, but he didn't want it. He didn't want to be president under the circumstances of the assassination.
Oh, definitely. Yeah,
Because
definitely.
you can listen to his declassified tapes with George Reedy, his press secretary. He complained to that guy all the time, like he didn't want to do, like, I got to go do this. I don't know how I'm going to do it. And
Yeah.
this is not what I...
Well, like his legacy was always tainted. You know, when Andrew Johnson became president after Lincoln was assassinated, they called him his accidency because he became president without being elected. And it's like that quote I posted a while back from Saboto's book, or I think it was from Saboto's book. It was that, you know, for the rest of his term, Johnson will always be haunted by the question of what would Jack Kennedy have done, and history continues to ask that question. You know, Johnson also worried that he would go down in history as being the mistake between the Kennedys, which had Robert Kennedy won that election, which I think is very likely. Robert Kennedy would have won that election. He would have been remembered as being the mistake between the Kennedys. You know, people who try to put Johnson at the head of this conspiracy. You're telling me this guy risked everything, risked his whole life, his whole career, his legacy, risked dying in prison or being executed. So what, you'd be a one-term president that people don't like? You know, the risk-reward ratio there is totally out of whack.
And if he did all of this and went through all the effort of killing the president, why didn't he want to be president after 1963?
Yeah.
64.
He won an election in 64. He won a landslide election in 64, LBJ.
But he didn't want to do it anymore. He quit.
Yeah. He could have run again in 68. He could have run again. The maximum time any one person can be the president of the United States is 10. It's 10 years less 1 day. That's the maximum amount. So I don't know why they wrote it that way. 10 years less 1 day. Why don't you just say 10 years? You know, but he could.
Another way of saying no more than 10 years.
Yeah, he could have been. He could have run again in 68, and he probably would have won.
300 agents, 7,000 select Cubans, 50 fake business funds for laundering money. They waged
I'll leave the
non-stop
player
war
here.
against Castro.
Makes sense. So we can
Industrial
finish.
sabotage, crop burning.
Cut down on logistics.
And all of this came
tomorrow.
under the control of General Watt. All he did was take the rules of covert warfare he'd used abroad and brought them into this country. Now he had the people, the equipment, the bases,
Yeah, go for
and
it,
the
bro. It's in the
motivation.
fridge, just grab it all.
And don't underestimate the budget cuts that Kennedy called for in March of '63 either. Nearly 52 military installations in 25 states, 21 overseas bases. You're talking big money. You know how many helicopters have been lost in Vietnam? Nearly 3,000 so far.
Oh yeah, I believe
Who makes
that.
Bell Helicopter. Who owns Bell? Well, Bell was nearly bankrupt when the First National Bank of Boston approached the CIA about developing a helicopter for Indochina usage. How about the
UH-1 Iroquois,
General
the
Dynamics,
Huey,
West
my
Texas,
favorite.
Find out the defense budget since the war began. 75 going on 100 billion. Nearly 200 billion to be spent before it's over. In 1949, it was 10 billion. No war, no money.
Well, in 1949, you guys were fighting a Cold War all over the world, you know?
It's the war. The authority of the state over its people resides in its war powers.
No, just
and Kennedy
in the
wanted to end the
Washington
Cold
one.
War.
Yeah, that's the only one I have.
He wanted to call off the moon race in favor of cooperation with the Soviets.
We don't know that. We don't know that he wanted to call off the moon race in favor of cooperation with the Soviets. I think that's somebody's wishful thinking, you know?
He signed a treaty with the Soviets to ban nuclear testing. He refused to invade Cuba in 1962, and he set out to withdraw from Vietnam.
We don't know that. Again, you got to recall the interview with
Walter
Cronkite, where he explicitly says it would be a mistake to withdraw. And people always make this point, but the honest truth is, you know, on the day Kennedy became president, there was less than 1,000 American combat troops in Vietnam. On the day he died, there was almost 10,000 combat troops in Vietnam. So he dramatically increased American involvement. The defense budget increased under Kennedy. The amount of nuclear weapons in the arsenal increased under Kennedy. So, you know, people who present him as this peacenik,
on the 22nd
you
November,
know, guy, that's not an accurate view of who JFK was as a person.
What about that order they talk about that he's...
Action Memorandum number 263.
Something's underway, but it has no face. Yet everybody in the loop knows.
Forget about your combat troops. He told McNamara he is going to pull out the goddamned advisors. He fucked us in Laos, and now he is going to fuck us in goddamn Vietnam.
He won't implement it before the election. He can't afford to.
True.
I hear the NSC
He wouldn't have implemented it before the election. He couldn't afford to.
David talks about this scene when that podcast he did with Lambert.
Oh yeah.
He talks about this scene here.
Yeah. This is a great scene.
Vietnam, which is so far away.
Son of a bitch, there he goes again. He's got his hands on the chicken switch.
Anyway,
Max Taylor.
The chiefs still think we ought to go into Cuba.
Money's at stake. Big money. $100 billion. Kennedy brothers target voting districts for those defense dollars. They give TFX fighter contracts only to those counties that are going to make a difference in 64, and the people in the loop, they fight back. Their way.
We have to control the intelligence from Saigon.
Well, just don't let McNamara start sticking his damn nose in this thing. Every time he goes over to Saigon on some fucking fact-finding mission, he comes back and just scares the shit out of the president. Now, won't Max Taylor on him night and day, like a fly on shit. Now you control McNamara.
That's LBJ, isn't it?
Control Kennedy.
Looks just like him.
I think it
Sounds
started
like
like
him.
that. In the wind. Defense contractors, big oil bankers, just conversations, nothing more. Then a call is made. Maybe to someone like my superior officer, General Y.
Yeah.
We're going. We need your help.
When?
In the fall. Probably in the south. We want you to come up with a plan.
I can do that.
Everything is cellularized. No one has
So
said
he knew that was
he
coming.
must die.
Who?
There's been no vote.
The way they
Oh yeah, we're going. So they've already discussed it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Military firing squad. 5 bullets, 1 blank, no one's guilty.
Yeah,
Because everyone in
that's
the
not
power
what
structure
happened.
knows anything.
Although there are people who
There are
claim
no
that
compromising connections
the shot
except
from the
in
knoll
most
was a
secret point.
diversionary shot, but I don't understand why that makes
Is that it
sense.
must succeed, no matter how many die, no matter how much it costs.
That might be a Jim Mars
perpetrators must
thing.
be on the winning side.
Carmine needs
and
to
never
talk about
subject to
that,
prosecution
I recall.
for anything by anyone.
I don't know if he was saying they were shooting blanks or what, but it just does not logically make sense. You know?
Kennedy announces the Texas trip in September. At that moment, second Oz will start popping up all over Dallas, where they have the mayor and the
Carmine
cops in their pocket.
tends not to talk
General
very
Y
much
flies in the
about the
assassins.
actual occurrence and the evidence on the
Special
ground.
camp will keep outside
His
Athens,
approach
Greece.
is criticizing the investigation.
Yeah, which is a very popular approach amongst conspiracy theorists to criticize.
What rooftop? Part of the scenery, right?
Again, these tramps,
Keep thinking
we
about that
know who
day.
they are. And actually, there's a scene where they're being, there's a photo where they're being led through the plaza, and there's a woman in the background holding her nose because they're drunks. They probably stink like booze and piss, you know?
That was the one I had today. I think that was the photo I had today.
Yeah, actually, I think it was, yeah. When they're crossing at Almy Houston there. I think that's the photo.
Policy and gets a green light for covert action against North Vietnam, which provoked the Gulf of Tonkin incident.
Just get me elected. I'll give you your damn war.
In that document, lay the Vietnam War.
All right. That's a good spot to pause it. We will come back to this tomorrow and finish this up. So I'm just going to stop the recording now.